Hopefully we're back. All right, let's get new YouTube up. Yeah, we're back. Cool. All right, let me send this to old stuff. All right, well, we were just about to get to our first story.
Yeah.
Let's make Rockfin turn on. Rumble should still be going. Sorry about that, everybody. Yeah, right when we got to thanking our people for supporting us, since YouTube won't let us. But yeah, you know.
I said thank you very much.
All right, you ready for our first one?
Let's wait a little bit.
Okay.
Let's just wait until people start
People start
showing
coming
up.
back in.
Yeah, just want to make sure people figure out what happened. I think people did, but
yeah, people know by now. Our people are used to this. But yeah. I don't know if people are just joining us, but we have stories coming up. We're about to do this one.
Yeah.
We talked about the KURSK offensive, where we're going to talk about that, and the Iron Dome, and the Nakba. Seems like a pretty standard night for us. Jeff Thomas Black, right on, one strike and we're out. You were out. Yep, that is
Basically.
that's how it works. Welcome to YouTube. We are on other platforms. If you can find us, you can always go to indienewsnetwork, find all the links to all our channels, so you can go support us on other platforms. But, luckily this is a restream internet problem, I think. I don't think this is YouTube this time. So,
No.
But yeah, everything else seems to be going. Rumble's going, Rumble's up. I do believe. Let's refresh the Rumble just in case. And cool. All right. Let's go here.
Do we want to do a new Twitter?
Nah, we're probably fine. Most people don't see the Twitter thing anyway.
Okay.
But the Rockfin and Rumble for that should be working, so
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, people are coming back in. People are figuring it out.
Coming back in. Yeah. All right. So, and if not, you can
Catch up. There's a
scroll
rewind
back
button.
or watch the clips later. So,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people are starting to, I think we're at 14. I think we're at 8 now. So I think we're good.
Yeah, we're catching up.
So, all right. So our first story tonight, didn't want to make this Gaza heavy as I said earlier, beginning to get Gaza fatigue. Just feeling that that's all there is if it's not mainstream news.
Yeah.
This is
You are
kind
fake
of
news.
mainstream news. But this is from friend to the show in our head, Collin Johnstone, who usually always writes great articles calling out the establishment. And I think in light of all the major stories, especially around Harris over the past week, I felt this was kind of fitting to kind of talk about. I know Indy also wrote a Substack article on this issue that he featured on
Hardlands today, I think.
not in this segment, but he did talk about it on Hardlands today. So shout out to Kit and Daniel for hosting Indy.
Yep.
To share his Substack article. So that being said, Caitlin wrote this article, I believe, on Monday, where she writes, "No one would vote for any of this bullshit without extensive manipulation. It is a well-documented fact that under the Western Empire, not only are your political systems aggressively manipulated by the rich and powerful for the benefit of the rich and powerful, but public opinion is as well. insane systems which rely on exploitation, injustice, ecocide, militarism, and war are actively normalized via mass scale psychological manipulation. So Caitlin continues. One of the biggest lies we're sold in Western politics is that election results paint an accurate picture of what the public truly wants. We are told that candidates who promote peace and economic justice lose elections because their platforms are unpopular with the wider public, as though the people are organically coming into worldviews which support poverty, inequity, war, and militarism all on their own. Socialism isn't just as unpopular, we are told, as though we don't live under a capitalist empire that has spent generations violently stomping out socialism wherever it pops up and brainwashing the public into despising socialism at home. Americans just don't care that much about foreign policy, we're told, as though Americans aren't being propagandized to the gills every day of their lives into seeing their government's bloodthirsty warmongering as normal and acceptable. It is a well-documented fact that under the Western Empire, not only are our political systems aggressively manipulated by the rich and powerful for the benefit of the rich and powerful, but public opinion is as well. Insane systems which rely on exploitation, injustice, ecocide, militarism, and war are actively normalized by a mass-scale psychological manipulation, and we are then presented with candidates and platforms which support those systems and told that anything else is fringe commie extremism.
Yep.
If left to their own devices, nobody would organically come to the conclusion that they should be people living on the streets, while investment properties are left empty, that normal people should be working 2 jobs to feed and house their families, while Machiavellian plutocrats amass billions of dollars, that we should be destroying the ecosystem we depend on for survival to increase profits for corporate shareholders, or that we should be encircling the planet with war machinery to terrorize and murder any population on Earth who disobeys the dictates of Washington. But that's what our elections serve us year after year, decade after decade, because no part of this is organic. So now we're seeing a US election where 2 tyrannical capitalist warmongers are squaring off against each other, appealing to the votes of America's 2 mainstream political factions, which are only mainstream because vast fortunes have been poured into propaganda manipulations to make them mainstream. Then you got candidates like Jill Stein saying normal, sane, and common sense things about peace and justice, while being framed as an extremist lunatic by the consent manufacturers of the mainstream press. And when Stein loses in this aggressively manipulated information environment within
Yeah.
this aggressively manipulated electoral system, it will be framed as evidence that her politics were seen as too fringe and kooky for the mainstream public.
Even though they're like bare minimum. Like,
Yes.
you know.
And we've said this before. And
Yep.
look, and I'm speaking for myself. I know you think slightly differently. If you feel compelled to vote for Jill Stein, go at it. However, for me, and I probably can speak for Indy and Reef as well,
Yeah, we're
I
none of
just
the
personally
above.
believe that really the reality is Jill Stein is not running to be president. She is running to get 5%.
Funding.
She's running to get 5% funding.
Yeah.
So, and we've made this argument that given and what we've seen, and it's funny because I said this on Twitter today. It's so funny how the Democratic Party can seemingly, because there's always an issue with Republicans seemingly, well, always, bend the knee and come together for shit that they want, and the Democrats are kind of whatever. Well, somehow or other, they got their act together and got behind Kamala Harris without any problems. But they can't come together over progressive issues that we need, like abortion, minimum wage increase, or living wage would be even better, like universal health care. Somehow we had dissension within the party. over those things, but they all can come together, at least seemingly so, for the sake of pushing in Kamala Harris for us, that people are already kind of like, yay, queen, slay queen, girl boss, all that bullshit.
Unity.
So, but going back to Jill Stein for a second, she will have to she will have to do all these things, or at least work within progressive policies within a duopoly that is not going to allow her anything. So that's the thing that I have said, and I know others have said, that it's not necessarily talked about. It's the idea for her is, okay, if you get this 5% funding, what's the guarantee that the duopoly is going to give that to you?
Yeah.
And then even in the miracle that you
and I've only heard
president,
I've only heard one set of numbers on that, like what they actually get, which is nothing. It's very
Right.
small amount of money that they will be mismanaged.
Do you know
I don't
how
know if
much?
you look at the greens, I forget offhand, but it's like something like 100 million, maybe. If I don't even think it's that.
Which is
Nothing.
chicken change. Really.
Please don't take me as like accurate on that, but I've only seen one person
No,
even
but
say
if
that.
anyone knows, let us know in the chat.
Yeah.
But even if that's the case, as I said, like, what's the guarantee that that money will be given to the Green Party? If anything,
and the Greens have not been great
taking them to court
on that.
And then, right. Yeah, I
So,
can imagine duopoly taking them to court first over.
There's plenty of
giving them
people who
that
feel
money.
like that
So-
electoral system is rigged. So, you know, and we've
Yes.
talked to many of those candidates. So, hate to tell you, but voting ain't it, fam. Sorry.
Right. So, I mean, that being said, if you choose to vote for a party,
go ahead.
you have the right to do so. But I think I and M pretty much are team one of the above, because we believe that the whole system needs to be destroyed in order for anything to happen on the benefit of the poors, essentially. And that's not going to happen within the current system that we have. But, you know, that's just our thing. That doesn't necessarily have to be you.
Yeah.
Even with that, I will say, if there are ballot initiatives in your state, definitely vote for that.
That I think is
because-
useful, but please do look into them. Don't just read the headline and check mark. Like, some of that stuff is not what you think it is. They deliberately worded to be pretty terrible.
I know Sabi, shout out to her. She's going to go. She typically does ballot initiatives in every state, and I think she's going to be starting that soon, if not already. So definitely check her out, at least when she clips those out. Definitely watch those so you have an idea of what ballot initiatives are happening in the state. And as we've said, some of them can be really worded so that, you know, it could either be mostly for or against something, even though it might pose otherwise.
Yeah.
When I said, like, I'm done with the two-party system, I meant I was done with all of it. I don't care who comes along. I don't care if Jesus comes down from the sky himself and says, Sabby, I'm running as a Democrat. I'd be like, bye.
What?
Whoa.
I've had that one in there for a bit.
Since when did you get that?
I've had that one for a while. Just don't have opportunities to use it occasionally.
Wow.
You know?
Oh, God.
But,
Well, I think that might come up a little more frequently now that we're in the kooky, crazy times of election season. But anyway, continuing with the article. Whenever I talk about this dynamic during a high-profile election season, I am always inundated with a deluge of knee-jerk point missers asking, well, who should we vote for then? Which is kind of like Morpheus telling Neo he's been living his whole life in the Matrix, and Neo going, okay, but how do I get my boss to give me a raise in my cubicle job where I work? It doesn't matter, Neo. The whole thing's an illusion. What matters is getting people to open their eyes to this reality so that meaningful action can be taken. If you're having a dream about being chased by a lynch mob, your only concern is making sure your own interests win out over the interests of the mob. When you wake up from the dream, you don't spend the rest of your day wondering how you're going to get away from the mob. You concern yourself with your real material interests in your waking life. That's what this should be like. If you really grasp what's being pointed to here, you won't keep getting swept up in the mass psychosis of the election season hysteria, and party politics won't have any gravitational pull on your mind. Instead, your focus will be on helping people to realize that this is all a carefully manufactured illusion, because until enough of us are awake to the real world, there'll be no chance of using the power of our numbers to overthrow the tyrants who've been pulling the wool over our eyes this entire time. So,
I mean, as Collin said, it's a big club, and we certainly ain't the fuck in it, are we? You know?
No.
So I think her big point is that, like, look, none of these people have real power. They are figureheads, regardless of what you want them to, you know. Like, this is not 3D chess. It's very easy. There's a couple of people at the top if you follow the money, and that is who really rules your shit. As Collin put to us, they own the land. They own the, you know, like, they own it. It's theirs. You have no power here. And as I know Caitlin Johnstone is a fan of, because she writes about it frequently, Alan Watts is saying you can only control what you can control. That is what you have control over. So you got no power here. It's time to focus on other ways of enacting the things you want.
Well, it's not to say we don't have power. We do.
Not in that sense. Not electorally. You know,
not electorally, no, but that's where they get. That's where they get us, and that's
things
the idea
like
now that even now that
boycotting,
people, like,
you know, that has
not
real
only
effects.
that, but it's just like for many, but for many people, like Gaza in particular, was a red line for a lot of people. I know people who were uncommitted, like in the primary. I know someone in particular who wrote in Gaza where Biden, where you can bubble in Biden. And now that Kamala is in, they're like, I'm all in.
Yeah.
But Kamala is not doing, and we know this, and this has been reported by our colleagues in the space.
Yeah.
Kamala it's proving not to do anything different on Gaza compared to what Biden is doing.
Plan.
And Trump, don't go on like, well, Trump will be, no, don't try that game in terms of Trump. Like, right now,
we've
Trump
heard that
isn't
before.
president. So, you know, so
I mean, essentially, they're
really,
trying to slip young Hillary at you while you're not paying attention, and you're thankful that it's not Biden, not realizing that because it's not Biden, everyone has to figure it out again. Everyone knew with Biden, you know, like now it's to the point where people got to learn themselves something over Kamala to pretty much she's worse, if not better. And all they got left is lesser evil nonsense, which I heard the other day, and I forget who said it. Someone will tell me. But to think something is the lesser evil, it means you think that it's the same evil, but it affects you personally less. That is pretty much what that means. So, like, you know.
Right. No, that's what it is. It's your comfort. Like, what are you more comfortable with? What are you able to tolerate?
Which is why they throw the identity politics out at you.
For most people,
you know,
like for
you
most
had that
people,
clip the other day.
Tolerate Trump, and rightly so. But at the same time, it's like,
what was
you're
it?
able to stomach what the Democrats are able to do, which I would argue is a lot more nefarious and a lot more damaging because they do it very slowly and they do it often with you not realizing it. And then it's like, yeah, it's, I don't know. So it just feels kind of weird being, I think this is our first year essentially having this show in the midst of election season. So it's just been wild just to kind of see, like, almost just comical how people, even in our space, have jumped ship and just are like, oh, Kamala is good, or Waltz is good. And like, I feel it was almost as if people were waiting for a reason to vote Democrat. They couldn't justify themselves
Well,
to do it for Biden.
you posted this the other
So
day, which I thought was very poignant
yes,
here, of our
yes,
blackness and our womanness are not in themselves trustworthy if we allow ourselves to be conscripted into positions of power that maintain the oppressive status quo. You know, Professor
yeah. You
Ruha
know what? Why don't you
Benjamin.
play the
Okay.
Yeah, so we featured this a few months ago. But I felt like I think this was, as I said, I think in that tweet, I think some of you need a reminder
Yeah.
of what she said, because there's a lot of information like with Kamala giving her race. I got called out by people because of like, why are you focusing on our race? Why are you focusing on the policy? And it's like, well,
We
we
could do
do have
both.
some of her policies. We do have her record,
Right.
given how with her as a senator, with her as a attorney general, and as a prosecutor in California, it's not promising, especially for Black people.
Which
But
I would
seemingly
say,
that's
first
available.
of all, as the non-melanated member of this show, y'all don't do that for my people. I'm gonna tell you right now. Like, I know plenty of people who would argue that you're more than willing to focus on the race aspect of me first, and then my policy. Like, there's plenty of you out there as well. Like, we're like that dumb white boy, and I feel you. I feel you on that. But like at the same time, like there was plenty of reasons to be mad at people other than that,
Right.
So
And I think especially for Black people who are familiar with Kamala's record, who are
yeah,
kind of running for the hills and are kind of telling people like, please be careful, and people just don't give a damn.
yeah,
It just reminds me of 2020 all over again. And it's kind of like, it's very frustrating. It's very, it's just really frustrating to me that people have not learned anything from 4 years ago or even from
no
2016.
goldfish
It's just,
brains, you know.
right. It's just the idea of like, you know, you're you're looking for people to ultimately save you, but the idea is they haven't done anything that is worth you trusting them to actually
No,
do the shit
Mr.
that they want you
Superman,
to do.
he no is here.
Mr. Superman,
So
here,
that be yeah.
you know.
Let's listen to what Dr. Benjamin is saying again, and yeah, we'll finish up.
Black faces in high places are not going to save us.
Which, Professor, if you
Just
want to
look
come
at the
talk,
Black proponents of Cop City in
more than
Atlanta's
ways to get
leadership
a hold of
class.
us.
Black faces in high places are not going to save us. Just look at the Black woman's hand, ambassador at the UN, voting against a ceasefire in Gaza.
Can you pause there?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to talk about this, but this phenomenon has been happening over the last 48 hours, I think, on Black Twitter especially. Like,
and you ain't Black.
There's some psyop going on regarding like some TikTok, and I don't know the full details, but I kind of know of it, but it just seems very stupid, like how this came about. But essentially, like there's some allegedly Palestinians, I guess, who were or allegedly saying anti-Black stuff. And then like, and we know like, the bots kind of came in and elevated it to being like, to make
any
it
of
more
that's
of an
gonna
issue
get
basically, yeah.
Yep.
But basically trying to create dissent among Black people and Palestinians in light of the genocide.
Yes.
And which to me is just kind of like stupid.
Yeah, because that doesn't work. It's the same thing with the LGBT thing, man. It's the same thing. They try to do that crap too, and it's just wrong. It's just Islamophobic wrongness. Like,
right, but it's like, and I was listening to Afeni who kind of mentioned this. She mentioned this in like on Twitter by TikTok. She mentioned like, even if Palestinians were anti-Black, that doesn't excuse the fact that they're being genocided right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that also kind of relates to Black people. Like, we've talked about how Israel is very much tied within the Black community. especially given like with cop cities and all that kind of stuff. That's all Israel. So if you don't think that what's happening in Israel is not going to happen to Black communities here, you're dead wrong. And look, I've gotten called out, especially when I did that panel with Savvy a couple of weeks ago. Like I got every Black person call me everything but a child of God, basically being like, you're a terror, like go back to your country, you have no right to. But look, as I say, and I don't apologize, foreign policy is domestic policy. You need to know what's happening in the world in order to figure out how that's going to.
Going back to your country is part of the Caribbean, reparations. So I hate to be that guy, but like we all, brothers and sisters, could go back to our countries if given the opportunities to do so. So maybe fight for those. I don't know.
I think it's all under the guise of like isolationist. I think Baraka said, I forgot the exact term he used, but it's like isolationist Negroism, essentially.
Like that shit.
But it's just the idea that your whole world is centered around America, and you can only think in terms of the oppression that you experience.
Like, bro, y'all got thrown off the boat a little quicker than the other ones. Like, there's no difference. I'm sorry to tell you.
No.
Like,
no.
And you should be thinking, because we are now the globalists. It's a global problem, not like you should be thinking globally here. It is a global problem that affects you. Like, that little triangle went like all over the globe, like not just like to America and back. It's not a line, it was a triangle, right? Like of the biggest ocean. Like y'all ended up in Asia. Like, you know how this works, right? Like those boats went places. Like, I just find it funny, dude. Everyone that watched that knew you and Nico were like the only ones people could listen to. So, as I think Nick said.
Anyway, let's finish up.
That is, our blackness and our womanness are not in themselves trustworthy. If we allow ourselves to be conscripted into positions of power that maintain the oppressive status quo,
like
our blackness and womanness are not themselves trustworthy if we support the occupation of Black neighborhoods with so-called better trained police, or remain silent about the genocide of oppressed peoples around the world funded by our tax dollars. And here, let me please shout out the incredible Spelman students and AUC siblings who have been organizing with Stop
Phi
Cop
Delta
City
Kappa, especially,
and Justice in Palestine, among many other troublemakers in this room. You all remind us that college is not a waiting room to enter the real world, but that you can start transforming that world right here, right now. It goes without saying, but let me just say it anyway. For student activists speaking out courageously for Palestine and Congo and Haiti and to stop Cop City, they should not be threatened with expulsion, loss of scholarships, or have public safety called on them for protesting. Too often, our institutions celebrate student activists after they've graduated, even giving them honorary degrees.
Yeah. So, so the whole point, what Dr. Benjamin is saying is Kamala, I would just say anyone in government, anyone in positions of power, your gender, race, anything as far as your identity in of itself should not be the thing that people should be looking at. It's like, what are you doing? And I'll say this for Kamala. If you are a woman of color, what do you plan to do for people of color that elevates their experience? In her case, or just anyone in general, how are you going to use your power of influence to elevate those around you? If you're not doing that, then get the fuck out. That's what you should be using your power for. Not getting like the feels because you can get the first Black woman or the first Asian woman or the first. I'm tired of like, oh, this could be the first.
Well,
anything.
It's all PR stuff. It's like, and this could be a whole segment within itself about Black language, especially in and around HBCUs, of like speeches are a very particular thing. It literally sounds like Black preaching, like I'm sure it's like when Kamala shows up at HBCUs, you don't think she pulls out the, extra syllables on stuff and,
well, she did that already with when she did that rally with Megan Thee Stallion.
The most amount of code speak,
Right. But that's the issue that people have with Kamala is that race aside, she just comes off as inauthentic. It just comes off as
it's hot sauce in her bag. It's the same thing.
Right.
It's literally the same thing.
Right.
Like
it comes off as you're trying to build into relationships
it's gaslight
that you don't necessarily have versus just be.
Look at the gaslight.
So, you don't necessarily need to highlight your womanness, your Asianness, your Blackness, whatever. Just tell us, what do you plan to do?
Right.
And as of right now, she still
ain't got no policy on her. I know.
Although, like from what I read today, like she's basically getting BlackRock folks to work on her economic policy, which is kind of like great. So just
it's like
more of the same.
Oh, y'all want policy decisions? Well, I'll fucking here you go, dog. Like here's BlackRock Vanguard's like handwritten request sheet. Jesus Christ.
Right.
It's like they're probably not even. It's probably going to be AI, dude. AI is probably going to do it. They have AI writer policy. They already have it doing their
at this point,
fucking campaign photos.
I mean, at this point, I wouldn't put it past them to even do that. But
yeah, I saw NPR talking about that today, where like they couldn't, they had an expert come on and be like, no, it actually matched the campaign. Like I've seen 3 or 4 of them go out. What do you mean? They are AI, like very clearly, like their people's faces are messed up and there's hands with like extra things. They have people holding up cell phones recording video and the screens are black. Like, tell me something staged or funky or weird about it. Like, but anyway, you're going to say something about this, I take it?
Yeah, so a shout out to Caitlin, for our article as always. And as always, YouTube hates us and they told us they hate us and they're not going to push or promote our channel or shows at all. So, I mean, at least they kind of said it in that way, vague. So that being said, we really need your help and support in order to grow, but most importantly, to be able to continue this operation that we have. So if you are interested in helping us, and by the way, we always say, take care of your families, take care of your communities, take care of your personal stuff in regards to finances. We know it's tough out here. Your likes, your shares, your subscriptions really are enough for us. But if you have some extra money that you care to send our way, you can scan the QR code that you see on your screen, or you can go to the link that you see on your screen. Or if you get all of those, you can either go to !donate, where you're able to get the link in the chat, or you can go in our description and get all the links of where you could support INN. Please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. We're trying to get to, well, you're not going to say free, K. As we said, YouTube is not promoting or pushing our shit. So, so we want to start growing, obviously. And that
We've been doing pretty
we're
good.
able to,
but yes.
Yeah. But more people is always helpful. So be sure to like and subscribe, and please share our stuff to fight the suppression, and make sure to leave a comment. We do read those and we do respond to them. And help us get to, well, you said free. Help us get to 5K.
Yeah.
And thanks for watching.
Julio.
All right. So, oh yeah, so check. While
he's talking about this is our goal.
Actually, shout out to Indy, reminded us. I was going to say that earlier, but then we got cut off. So we are doing another fundraiser. If you want to give, so we have the Indie Media Awards coming up in a few months. Thank you. And we have connected with the Zago brothers. The Zago brothers, you might have seen on Twitter, they did some awesome self-portraits of various commentators and activists in the independent media space. We connected with them to do illustrations for past and upcoming honorees that we want to highlight for this channel as a way to kind of thank and acknowledge the work that they've been doing, whether it's activism or journalism or doing this. So they are very excited to partner with us, but in order for them to at least create all of those illustrations, that actually takes some work, and that actually will take some money. So we are asking for $2,000 to help supplement the cost of them producing all the portraits that they have to do. And the good thing about these portraits, and I think Indy is trying to connect with them to see if they can do this, that could be an opportunity for you to probably maybe purchase your own portrait for your favorite commentator or favorite group that you're able to customize yourself and have in your own home. And we're actually thinking in terms of things that we can specifically do for INN, especially for people who really who support us heavily, that we're thinking of doing some things as far as an extra perk for you guys. So it's a win-win all around. It gives the Zago brothers a little more exposure. It helps us in terms of, continuing to honor the people in our space that actually are independent, that actually are trying to do the work to spread truth. And it's also hopefully going to be a way for you guys to perhaps even take a piece of the action home as well. Who knows?
It's a very good deal. Very good. The deal's very good. The best deal. People tell me they're very good pictures. Very good. The Zago brothers, they're very good people. And if you don't like anybody, they made it as very good business sense. Very good. Right? They told us, well, we could do it a la carte. A la carte, fancy French word. It's great. You could get the ones that only you like. Like if you only like Trump steak, you can get that. But yes, very nice. So, pictures are good. Been seeing them come out. They're very good.
So we're gonna raise 2,000. So hopefully we can have that reached. I would hope by September at the earliest, but we'll see. But anything you're able to give towards that, we will appreciate. So in the links and all that jazz, if you want to donate to the cause. So anything on Rockfin?
The money is there.
Yeah, Anna Mayor's holding it down as always. Saying that Kamala Harris has condescending resting bitch face. So, you know, I mean, I can't argue with that. This is the opinion of animators, you know. Not mayors, but mayors. Mayors. Do you know about, while we're waiting and looking at stuff, do you know about like pin and pin mergers? Have you heard of this? Are you a language nerd such as myself? So, okay. For people in the chat, I want you to say the word PEN. Okay? Now say the word PIN. Do they sound the same, or do you make them two distinct words?
PIN or
PEN.
or what?
Like pin you write with,
PEN.
pin you poke stuff with.
Stuff with.
Pin or pin?
Pen or pin.
Right. Do you make them two different words, or do you say them like they're one word? Like they're the same word?
They're two.
Right.
Two.
So, okay. How about cot, COT, like you lay on, right? Or caught, CAUGHT. Do you say that as one word or two separate different words?
Two separate different words.
Right. So here in the South, I'll let you know if you want to get your Southern accent right. It's all pin, pin's pin, cot's cot, right? Like they're
Right.
same. But like this is how you learn how to do accents and whatnot, is what people do, you know, different. But you also grew up with some Queen's English, which I think, like, your language, your accent's all over the place. You know, I'm here to tell you.
Yeah, it's all over.
You got Boston, you got DC in there, you got like UK in there. I'm sure you got some Bajan thrown in.
Although some people have said I sound like I could be from the South, which maybe with
DC's kind of like that though.
I could see that.
DC's kind of like that though.
No.
DC's got like Southern food like there's something with that where it's like there's a ton of Southern stuff in DC, if I'm not mistaken. Like,
yeah, but not as far as accent, if there's any.
I think there was an exodus during like at some point to DC from the South, like that whole
yes,
you know, thing. But yeah. But yeah, it's all that stuff, diphthongs and whatnot, which are also fun. But let's get to Rumble. I didn't see anyone in there. It is working. I checked. There's 4 people supposedly watching. I guess you're lizard people. We got the Illuminati in here. They ain't got no thumbs. All right, they're not typing in chat. That's the only way we know. All right, so if you're not a lizard person, get those little thumbs typing. You know. But anyway, all right, you ready for our next one? Anything on YouTube?
Bryce
Smith
checking
says
YouTube, so
Peen long E. Peen. Like you're also near Baltimore. How would you say the sentence Aaron earned the iron urn?
Maryland accent is weird. Like,
yeah, earned the earned. Like, like
right, like
anyway,
yeah.
But all right. Well, Collin, let's turn this off. You been seeing anything about the KURSK offensive?
Not until you pulled this up, you'll ask.
Well, people forget because there's so much of our news is constantly distraction. But this is happening over in Ukraine. So they're gonna beat the Russians, Collin. They got this one offensive, and it's gonna be a Hail Mary, and they're gonna get a touchdown. Woo! Except that might not be the case. I'm betting your brain is already on this. So Blue Check Beth is replying to this person down here, which we know what we say about having this flag in your thing when the tweet comes out. You know, Caitlin Johnstone certainly knows. You're about to hear some stupid. But they say, Umfies, how's the KURSK situation going? Just tell me if it's good or bad. right? Like, oomphies. So, first of all, cringe button pressed. I don't know who needs to hear this, but oomphies is cringe AF. Oh, and it's going horribly for Ukraine. So yeah. Anyway, so we're gonna hear from Greg Stoker. Okay? And over in Mint Press, right, who gives us this lovely video that we're going to see here in just a second. But he also tied this article to it, titled "KURSK Offensive, Ukraine's High-Stakes Gamble for Diplomatic Leverage." Right? So you're wondering what that deal might be. So we'll get to that. But this is an actual hour live stream that he did that I do recommend going to go watch. Right? You can find it on State of Play over at Mint Press. It's on the Mint Press channel. I would leave it in the description, but YouTube's not letting us do that right now. So that's fun, but it is in the article if you go find this on Mint Press. But you know, he replies to this CNN video that we're all going to watch with him. And where they're talking about this KURSK offensive, and he's going to push back on some of that propaganda that we are about to witness ourselves. So if you're wondering, this is KURSK. It's in Russia. This is Ukraine. Yeah, we'll get to maps in a minute, but here, let's watch this.
Here we go. First of all, this is going to be the first reporting that I found. This is going to be from CNN, August 8th. And we're going to look at this and compare it to what we're seeing on the ground.
What we've been seeing, perhaps for 2 days now, is one of the most significant incursions into Russia since the start of the war, and total silence from Ukraine on the record about whether their troops are genuinely behind it. In the past, we've seen Russian citizens volunteering to fight for Ukraine, making those short incursions into Russian territory. But this, if you believe the Russian narrative, is potentially the Ukrainian regular military striding 5 kilometers, 3 miles deep into Russian territory, possibly further. The target of much of the assault appears to be a town called Sudzha. Russia calling this a major provocation. That's the words of President Vladimir Putin, suggesting that the Ukrainians have been firing on residential areas, a bit rich after Moscow has been doing that in Ukraine for over 2 years. But he was...
Yeah, of course they qualify that. You know, civilian targets have been struck, though, obviously. Yeah.
He was assured by his chief of staff that the advance had been halted. A very different picture, though, seen on social media videos, some suggesting, without what we can confirm ourselves, that even Russian servicemen were surrendering to Ukrainians, according to some Ukrainian accounts, showing damage inside the town of Sudzha and potentially a multi-pronged Ukrainian move inside of Russia. Why? Well, some analysts are pointing towards a gas terminal near Sudzha, which controls Russian gas that moves through Ukraine to Europe. Still,
that's definitely part of it. There's also a nuclear, in terms of important key civilian infrastructure, there's also a nuclear power plant in play, but this is very superficial supposition by CNN. Of course, it's only like 2 days into it, but we're going to really flesh this out.
Now, in the 3rd year of the war, that may now be under Ukrainian control. That may have been the objective. Kiev often looking to get control or inflict damage or influence on Russian infrastructure. But it's also a rare moment of good headlines for Ukraine in a war where they've seen the Donbass front line find Russian forces moving forwards incrementally, deliberately.
And, you know, now they're being honest. This is kind of one of the main strategic goals of this operation. I mean, there's not a lot of tactical gains, and we'll talk about like different ways to conceptualize military operations on this, because there's like 3 levels of conceptualization. There's tactical, like boots on the ground, operational, the entire battle space, and then strategic, which is like the geopolitical objectives of military action. So strategically, one of their goals is a PR win, because guess what? They kind of need a big PR win right now. So CNN's not wrong when they say like this is finally a good headline. It is, objectively, to suit their goals.
But very steadily towards Ukrainian military hubs. It's been simply bad news for Kiev for quite some time.
Okay, so that's the initial reporting. It doesn't really give anything to the audience.
Any questions?
No.
Yep. Well, let's skip forward a bit to his article that he writes with this. So let me uncopyright protect that. So 6 days ago, the Ukrainian army initiated a surprise counteroffensive into the Russian region of Kursk along Ukraine's northern border in what is the largest regional gain since the Kharkiv offensive nearly 2 years ago. The AFU initially captured over 350 square kilometers of territory. So this is the armed forces of Ukraine's first offensive on Russian soil and has apparently caught the Russian military unawares. However, the salient question remains, what are the goals of the brazen offensive? After 6 days of observation, it is becoming clear that the battle for Kursk could either end in a significant strategic victory that improves Kiev's negotiating position in the stalled peace talks, or a grave blunder that diverts men and material away from the fighting against the steady Russian territorial gains to the south. The Donbass is, after all, more valuable than Kursk. Which, do you hear the steady, right, being used? He mentioned it earlier, right? Where it's, to me, when you listen to that CNN thing where they're talking about, well, they've hit civilian targets, I do believe that's not the case. That they have limited civilian infrastructure, especially when compared to Israel's civilian infrastructure targeting, which we seem to be perfectly fine with. Like, the amount of damage to civilian infrastructure has been minimal because of this slow, steady push, which has made it harder for Russia to do, right? Like, they could drop 100 bombs on any of those cities. They are modern, capable army. You know what I mean? Like, so, you know, they've been very strategic in their response. So, like, that, I think, has been proven. But let's look at, so you're probably wondering why Ukraine even decides to, right?
Yes.
So the likely goals of the incursion are to stall the Russian initiative and territorial gains made since the start of 2024, and to secure a much-needed public relations victory for Ukraine in light of recent Russian successes. This would help shift the narrative to a more positive one for Ukraine, which is crucial for both its demoralized population and Western politicians who are increasingly hesitant to fund a losing proxy war. Additionally, Ukraine aims to capture and hold as much territory as is military viable to strengthen its diplomatic leverage in the event of resumed peace talks or a negotiated settlement. Right? So, another strategic objective is to improve Ukraine's leverage within the EU by capturing the Sudza gas metering station. Right? We've seen this be pretty important to Europe, right? You know, especially when you look at the Nord Stream being a factor, right? Which pumps nearly 50% of all Russian gas exports to the EU following the destruction of the Nord Stream. Okay? You know, and we definitely know who bombed the Nord Stream. Let's keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Ukraine may potentially threaten to shut off the gas flow to silence critics of the war, such as Hungary, which has vetoed several aid packages in Brussels that tend to provide military support to Ukraine. So this is part of the leverage they want, right? They're strong-arming Europe, essentially. You know, that's a nice gas pipeline. Be a shame if anything fucking happened to it, huh? It's that, right? So it is clear that Ukraine, already experiencing a military-wide manpower shortage, has committed a significant resources and assets to the assault, including two of its most well-equipped and fastest fighting brigades, the 22nd Mechanized Brigade and the 80th Air Assault Brigade, which at first looked like a typical lightning raid meant to embarrass Russian military leaders, now appears to be a more extensive operation. The AFU will try to hold this ground in order to shift Russian force disposition away from the Donetsk region and go for a larger, much-needed PR victory. Right? So they're moving away from the Donetsk into this, like, area Russia's had control of. Right? So, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Foreign Ministry Sergei Lavrov had reiterated several times during the failed Swiss peace summit in June that Russia is open to a ceasefire deal, but Kyiv would have to take into account the realities on the ground, implying that Ukraine would have to cede territory controlled by the Russian military. By holding territory in Kursk, Kyiv hopes to flip the script, seeing that President Zelensky said last week on X, "Our unwavering goal is to prepare a real foundation for a just end to this war already this year, and it is possible." So that's Zelensky saying that. Right? So if this is indeed the primary goal of Zelensky offensive at Russia, it looks more like a massive long-term blunder, since there's little chance the AFU can hold Russian ground into the autumn months with manpower and supply line shortages, and a loss of territorial gains will undermine any short-term PR victories. So, any questions so far?
Nope.
Thoughts, concerns?
Well, here's the thing. I thought Ukraine was working towards a peace deal.
Well, there's been some shenanigans with that where they were going to, but a particular, troll-looking individual by the name of Boris Johnson decided to go over there and put a stop to that. But we've covered that. We've covered that Ukrainian peace deal. So, essentially they're trying to get political leverage for another peace deal, right? We're trying to move away from Ukraine, and especially if they can get Kamala to broker it, they'll be more than happy to take that, I think. Or they get Trump to do it. One of the two, So kind of like Iran hostage negotiation stuff. It's like, oh, suddenly when you're inaugurated, things get fixed. You know what I mean? So, but anyway, let's go back to Greg Stoker, and he had another video to showcase, this time from a Reuters cutout.
If we look at other media and how they're reporting it, and I'm focusing the beginning of this episode on this because it's really important to understand like how most people's view of this conflict is manufactured and maintained. We're going to look at some of the information Forbes was focusing on through a subsidiary channel. And it basically is just sticking to like what elite units were involved in the operation and no details beyond that. Again, I think it's important. We're going to look at it.
A column of armored vehicles rolling into southern Russia's Kursk Oblast on the third day of Ukraine's surprise attack into Russia confirms the involvement of one of Ukraine's best equipped and fastest moving brigades, the 80th Air Assault Brigade. The Forbes media outlet reported this. It is noted that a video that circulated on social media depicts a T-64BV or T-80BV tank, a UR mine-clearing vehicles, an IMR-2 engineering vehicle, plus BTR-80 and US-made Stryker wheeled armored personnel carriers rolling past a busy Ukrainian mortar crew.
Okay, so this is really not information that you need. What is interesting is they do have Strykers, which are US armored personnel carriers. I used to have to do a couple of operations in Strykers when I was in Ranger Regiment. They're pretty low maintenance. They don't need a lot of gas. They're fast. They're a good fighting vehicle. And yeah, they were using... It's clear that they're using their best equipment and best troops for this operation. And we don't know how many of those they actually have left. So they kind of may be expending like surplus equipment that they don't have.
All the vehicles are up-armored with anti-drone cages. Infantry crowd the top of the BTR-80. Forbes recalls that only the 80th Air Assault Brigade operates that mix of ex-Soviet and ex-American vehicles. Further confirmation is found in a separate video shot by a Russian drone depicting strikes on ex-German Marder-tracked fighting vehicles in Kursk Oblast. The 80th Air Assault Brigade, like its sister unit, the 82nd Air Assault Brigade, apparently operates Marders alongside its Strykers. The Marders are heavy, the Strykers are fast. They suit the Ukrainian Air Assault Force's preference for swift but powerful attacks.
And of course, this is why one of the units, this unit was chosen. This is not the most tactically important region. I mean, you do have the massive gas pipeline, which could be consequential, but I don't think they're going to turn it off and start using it to leverage diplomatic power with Europe. We're going to get into that. But yeah, I mean, this was kind of undefended because it wasn't the most important place. It was from a different front, and they got in there fast and quick before Russia could organize, at least at first. Now there's a pushback and there's some resistance happening now a few days later. It did take some time to mobilize, but this is why they chose to do a lightning raid in there, because can they hold ground with light infantry units? I'm not really seeing any tank units. We're not really seeing a lot of artillery go in there. So this is why people originally thought that this was a raid and not like an incursion where they're going to try to hold ground. But it looks like now they are.
According to Forbes, the participation of the 80th Air Assault Brigade, one of the better Ukrainian brigades, underscores the scale of the Ukrainian operation just north of Ukraine's northern border with Russia. Forbes says that in the 29 months since Russia widened its war on Ukraine, pro-Ukrainian fighters have launched many raids across the border into southern Russia.
Okay, so the footage we're seeing right now is reportedly, Russian soldiers being taken prisoner. I can't tell if it's a op or if it's real. I'm sure some prisoners were taken. It was a lightning raid. They were caught unawares, at least initially. So prisoners are going to happen. Anytime this happens, that's going to happen as well. So I can't vouch for the authenticity of these prisoner photos, but yeah, I just want to point that out there.
These raids have been small in scale and limited in scope and have never lasted more than a few days. More than anything, they've been meant to embarrass Russian leaders. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine believes that this offensive may force Moscow to transfer troops from the Donetsk region and slow down Russian successes in this direction. In order for this tactic to bring success to Kiev, the Russians must transfer many troops from the Donetsk direction. If the Russians stop the Ukrainian offensive in Kursk without bringing in additional forces, the offensive in Kursk will lose its meaning.
All right, well, that's a pretty unsophisticated summation of the situation. Combat forces will be redeployed to deal with this. Russia cannot tolerate an attack on its sovereignty and ground being taken. And we'll get into that in a second. But
so that's where we're at. Understand now? Vaguely?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Well, let's look at Big Sergey on Twitter at Right Sergey says, working up a full write-up, but it seems that Ukraine's foray into Kursk has created yet another crinky. It's an operational isolated attrition pit, will turn out to be a profligate waste of resources. If Kyiv thinks that they can use it as a bargaining chip, well, they're already pretty well stalled out. Used the forest canopy to gain strategic surprise, parlayed that into 2 or 3 days of driving around wildly while RU scrambled units in. Now they have to double down on a path to nowhere. Lots of subunits involved, making the Orbat a mess, but total personnel in Kursk not more than a few thousand. Now their staging areas and approach lanes will be pummeled. What a mess. Right? So Rubenstein and Klarenberg at Taunis at law. The BBC reports it's likely some sort of Western permission was granted for the Ukrainian occupation in Russia's Kursk region. Publicly, the Ukrainian government did not offer comment, but the language here strongly implies BBC was told of its approval on background. So here's the BBC. Given consent, Western worries of the war escalating. It's likely some sort of permission was granted for an operation of the size on Russian soil. In general, very few senior Ukrainian figures are saying much about this attack. The president's office told us no comments yet. Right? So Kit replying to Big Sergey, success of Kiev's Kursk incursion amply underlines why Russia could never allow Ukraine to join NATO. A 2,300 kilometer long flatland border with zero natural defenses can't be concretely protected 24/7. Precisely the risk of this happening that made it such a red line for the Kremlin. So that's where we're at. So he also, here's what he was referencing. So he was heavily invested in this. I led the U.S. delegation to the closing ceremony at the Winter Olympics, right? Pageantry with Putin and Russians. This was like a while ago. So he responded in the only way I think that he knows how, and the only way he thought was supportive of Russia's interests were, you talk about Russian sphere of influence, Ukraine was the reddest of red lines from Putin's point of view, right? So But we have Dave DeCamp weighing in as well. We have just all the indie media award honorees in this list. So Zelensky acknowledges Ukraine's offensive in Russia's Kursk Oblast. Again, Dave DeCamp over at antiwar.com. Go follow him if you haven't already. He writes on Saturday, Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky acknowledged for the first time. Remember, we heard Kit Clarenberg talk about they haven't, right? Well, on August 6th, Ukraine's U.S.-backed ground incursion into Russia's Kursk Oblast. Zelensky said in his nightly address that the Ukrainian military is working to push the war out into the aggressor's territory. He added that Ukraine was proving that it really knows how to restore justice and guarantees exactly the kind of pressure that is needed, pressure on the aggressor, right? Already all sorts of phrasing and rhetoric here. Fighting has been raging in Kursk since Ukraine launched its invasion, and the Russian Defense Ministry said on Sunday that its forces prevented a breakthrough deep into Russian territory. The Russian Defense Ministry claimed that since August 6, Ukrainian forces have lost 1,350 soldiers in Kursk, but the number isn't confirmed, and neither side has released information. The ministry also claimed that its forces deployed 29 tanks, 23 armored personnel carriers, 9 infantry fighting vehicles, 116 armored combat vehicles, 20 cars, 3 self-propelled launchers of the Buk M1 anti-aircraft missile system, 3 launchers and an AN/MPQ-65 radar station of the Patriot anti-aircraft missile system, a launcher of the Grad multiple launch rocket system, and 10 field artillery guns. What does that sound like to you, Collin? You know, just all this armament. Like, we have anti-aircraft, we've got tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, you know. Yes, anti-aircraft missile system, rocket systems, right? So they're trying to hold this. Local officials said 15 civilians were wounded when debris from a Ukrainian missile hit by Russian air defenses fell on a residential building. Isn't that nice? Where does that sound? It sounds like Israel, too. Due to the fall of missile debris on an apartment building in the regional center, 15 people were injured, all of whom are receiving necessary medical care. Right? So, acting Kursk Governor Alexei Smirnov wrote on Telegram. The U.S. is supporting Ukraine's attack on Kursk and has said Ukrainian forces are allowed to use U.S.-provided weapons. So that's U.S. weapons on what, Collin?
Sorry, say it again.
U.S. weapons being used where? On what? Where is Ukraine using them right now?
In Kursk.
Which was
Russia.
Russian territory.
Right.
Right? So remember how that was a red line for Putin like a couple of weeks, like months ago, where it's like, if this happens, expect some European cities to get hit. Right? Because if they're complicit in this, why would we not do that if you're going to do it to us? Right? So anyway, fun everywhere. So in the ground incursion into Russia for the first 2 years of the war, the U.S. prohibited Ukraine from striking Russian territory with U.S. missiles, but recently lifted that restriction in the wake of Russia's offensive in Kharkiv. Right? So Russia's defense ministry has reported that its forces have destroyed U.S.-made Bradley fighting vehicles, U.S.-made Stryker armored vehicles. The sanctioned use of U.S.-provided weapons in a Ukrainian ground incursion into Russia marks a significant escalation of the proxy war. The Pentagon has said the U.S. still does not want Ukraine to launch long-range strikes with U.S.-provided weapons, but has not defined how far into Russian territory would be too far. Zelensky is asking the U.S. to lift all restrictions on Ukraine's use of U.S. weapons. This is what we will continue to talk about with our partners, just as air defense protects lives, Lifting restrictions on long-range strikes will save thousands of human lives. Will it? Being able to strike more people will save lives? Bomb more, save lives. That is what Zelensky is saying here. But guess what, Collin? NATO doesn't think it'll work.
No.
Okay? So Dave DeCamp, again, Biden called Ukraine's ground invasion in Kursk a real dilemma for Putin, but NATO countries think Ukraine won't be able to hold territory in Russia's Kursk. So which is it? Huh? Again, NATO countries think it's unlikely Ukraine will be able to hold territory in Kursk, even if it takes weeks for Russian forces to drive the Ukrainians out. Bloomberg reported Tuesday, citing a Western intelligence official. Okay? Despite that assessment, the report said NATO doesn't harbor reservations about Ukraine's invasion of Russian territory, which the U.S. and NATO claimed they were unaware of the attack until the attack started. Another NATO official told Bloomberg that the incursion shows Ukraine can challenge Russia. Heavy fighting has been raging in Kursk since over 1,000 Ukrainian soldiers and dozens of armored vehicles, including many provided by the U.S., entered Russian territory last Tuesday. Right? And Ukrainians are taking heavy losses. So here's the map, right? So they lost over 2,000 since the invasion started, as of August 13th, I do believe. But I want you to look here, Collin, right? Look at this graph. And blue is Ukraine, clearly. Red is Russia, right? Do you see this red line here? This is what they had. Okay? Like, that's where the border was. And that's this incursion, right? Of Ukrainian forces. Okay, so have you ever watched Shaka Zulu?
Yes.
What is he known for? What is the major military technique Shaka Zulu is known for?
Oh, forgot. I forgot the name of it.
But what does it look like? Has a very strategic look.
Yeah, like kind of like a
classically horns, right?
Horn, yeah.
Right? A lot of cow stuff in Zulu culture, right? Including their shields represent rank. Anyway, I'm a weird nerd. But invented a spear better than anyone else. Best spear. Very good spears. What does that look like to you as far as this red line here? This red here. Like,
I mean, it's kind of hard to see on my screen, but it looks like
right, is horns.
Art. Yeah.
Right, yes. This is the this is going to get caught. They will surround this very easily, right?
Right.
Like, this was their border. I'm sure they put defenses here to allow them to better defend this. Right? So all these people in here are going to get fucked up.
Right.
Like, this is a suicide mission if I've ever seen one. You know? So, like, if they were able to push out this way, right? I'd feel like, okay. Right? Like, if they try to surround here, sure. But I think this is a very specific region they tried to get in with. This is their floodgate, and we can close this floodgate pretty easily. So we'll see. Don't look good for my end. Anyway, the invasion is seen as an attempt by Ukraine to gain leverage in future negotiations. We talked about this, right? The sooner Russia agrees to restore a just peace, the sooner the raids by the Ukrainian defenses forces into Russia will stop, right? This is also resource gathering as well, right? Ukraine's been kind of running dry. That's why they were talking about raids. Because there's been lots of that, you know? While the U.S. claims it was unaware of Ukraine's plan to invade Kursk, it is also strongly backing the invasion by allowing U.S. forces to use U.S. weapons. Again, we talked about this real dilemma Biden talked about. Remember, he's actually still president, allegedly. So the U.S.-backed operation, which is the largest invasion of Russia since World War II, marks a significant escalation of the proxy war and risks a major Russian response. Putin has said he views the incursion as the West using Ukrainians to attack Russia. Any questions?
I don't think so.
Sounds about right. Closing thoughts before we head out of this one?
I thought Ukraine was fighting for peace, or at least more open to it now.
Yeah.
But that's what I don't understand. It's like they're losing badly, and the idea that now they're, well, I guess who knows? But I think given it's anyone's game, really, it could be Trump or Harris. Like at this point, it could be either one of those two. But it almost seems like when it looked like initially that Trump was doing well, it seemed like, oh, okay, well, we need to wrap this up, because there's no way that the Republicans would necessarily continue giving money to Ukraine, although they would give money to Israel. But
have you ever watched Tasting History with Max Miller? It's a food show on YouTube, right? And speaking of Biden and presidency, this is about Shaja al-Dur, right? And al-Mali, which if I heavily suggest people go watch this to get what I'm talking about. I'll link it in chat for people. That'll work. But it talks about how that lady that you saw on the thumbnail was her Sultan husband died, right?
Right.
And like she was writing all the like policies and stuff and signing the requests to generals and whatnot, right? This is like greater Syria, Egypt, stuff. But very interesting history that people should go look into. But I just found it very fitting with what we've been hearing about Biden, that the lady Sultan behind the scenes might be writing the checks, so to speak. But anyway, well, any questions before I head out of here?
I don't think so.
Cool. Well, talking about these things, especially Ukraine, is why we're demonetized. So you can go to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork, scan that QR code on your screen with your camera apps on your phone. And, if you're in the live chat, you can put !donate. You can always find all the ways to support us at indienewsnetwork. If you go to that URL, links to donate and stuff will always be included there. But if you can't do that, very easy. All the engagement you already hear from every other YouTuber. Like and subscribe. Share the video. We are heavily suppressed. Any little bit helps there. And leave a comment. Let us know what you think. What's your opinion on it? But anyway, thanks for watching. All right. Before we get to that, you want to check YouTube and Rockfin and Rumble and all those things? Jeff Thomas Black over on the Rockfin saying proxy war equals World War III. So Anna Mayer's logging off for the night. No, all lizard people over on Rumble, 10 lizard people who can't use their opposable thumbs to type in the chat on Rumble. So, you know, don't be shy. Get in there. Tell us what you think. What do you got on YouTube?
Hold on. I see.
Fields of Green.
Oh yeah, so I'm on Team Orca. Orca said, I like how Jill Stein handled the subject of Ukraine with jank.
Chunk yogurt. Okay.
Okay.
I'd block both those people, but sure.
And that's it. I'm
what
seeing
else?
right now.
We got a raid coming in, which is nice. Alan Same Reuters. Poland says it received German request to arrest suspect in Nord Stream probe. Interesting. I wonder who they are saying did that. You know, I wonder if a boot is brought up. But anyway, you ready for your story?
Yep.
Cool.
So, gonna talk about the Iron Dome for a bit. You probably might have heard about the Iron Dome as kind of this impenetrable castle of a defense system that Israel has to counter any attacks from their neighbors, mostly from Iran.
Yeah. Syria too.
At least that's how it's reported usually, and how, you know, especially within the last few years, there's been issues as far as funding the Iron Dome, which has been kind of problematic with the Squad in particular. But in contrast to what you might think, it's actually, as you said, more of a paper tiger in terms of how truly much defense as it claims to be, which I also feel kind of relates to a breaking story that broke yesterday. I'm sure there's a kind of a correlate. Again, this is my speculation, but I don't think that it's going to be too far off the mark, though. But we'll get into that later. So let's talk about the Iron Dome, shall we, or the myth of it thereof. So this article investigation was done by Robert Inklakesh. He's been doing the damn thing at Minpress News as of late, where he reports on the myth of the Iron Dome, the costly lie behind Israel's impenetrable, in quotes, defense. So he reports, Israel's highly touted Iron Dome air defense batteries have been misfiring and causing civilian casualties in recent weeks, sparking controversy. The air defense system has consistently presented problems, including damaging infrastructure, proving cost ineffective, and failing to engage the number of targets claimed by the Israeli military. On August 6, reports emerged that a Hezbollah drone attack on the Israeli-led city of Naraiva, I guess I would say it, resulted in civilian casualties, leaving 13 wounded and 1 critically injured. However, the Israeli military quickly clarified that the munition had hit the Route 4 highway was actually a misfired Tamir missile from a nearby Iron Dome air defense battery. The incident followed another high-profile event about 2 weeks earlier, when the projectile exploded in the Syrian Druze village of Rajal Sams, killing 12 children and injuring dozens more. While Israel blamed Hezbollah and attempted to drum up sectarian strife, the Lebanese group rejected any involvement. Locals from the illegally occupied village pointed fingers at the Iron Dome system, claiming that they saw the missile flying from the Mount Hebron military site. An Israeli paramedic also told Al-Arabi TV reporter that the Sharpanel belonged to an Iron Dome missile. Despite consistent reports of Iron Dome misfires causing infrastructure damage, a notable case occurred near Tel Aviv in November. A video capturing a Tamir missile performing a 180-degree loop and exploding near a civilian area. In early December, the Israeli military announced an investigation into the malfunction after the video went viral online. The last investigation into such a malfunction was in May of last year, highlighting a recurring issue in nearly every conflict involving the Iron Dome.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, Any thoughts? I thought you were about to say something.
Not necessarily, not yet. I mean, figuratively triggering false alarms, we know this, right? It's also caused the deaths of people in and of itself, similar to how Ukrainian missiles recently, right?
Right.
You know, didn't it hit like a soccer match or something like that they tried to claim was Hamas, but was actually their own missile defense systems.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So, yeah, rate at four at best 4 or 5%, which you've also been seeing. Keep in mind, you have Iran has hypersonics, correct? Right?
Yes.
Which the Iron Dome can't do nothing about, like at all already, right? They have yet to use them. What have they been doing, Collin? Slow rolling drones, right? And they just overload the system with very cheap, like, drones.
Right. That's the thing. They haven't been doing really anything yet.
Right.
In as far as actual, like,
and then they send a couple missiles.
Retaliation.
So they send the drones in, right? And then the missiles come after the slow rolling, like, drone swarm, right?
Right.
And, like, then there's no missiles left, which these missiles for the Iron Dome, I'm sure we're going to get to, are fucking pricey. Like,
right. Well, not even with I wouldn't say the sneak attack, but I call it the warning shot back in, when was it? May. Like the fact that we had to support them, you know,
right.
and I think we made that a call back then. It was kind of like, shouldn't the Iron Dome be able to take care of all of this? But yet they needed Jordan to assist. They needed, like, the US to come in and assist for essentially nothing, not nothing, but, like, you know, they didn't do the damage was fairly minor because they were being very careful. But, you know, but that kind of shows even then that kind of like, what the hell is the Iron Dome there for? Like, if it was supposed to be this state of the art, like,
well, this is the thing that Russia has been saying about our equipment, and China has been saying about our equipment, right? You know what I mean? Where they're literally saying it's about warfare has changed, where it's now about how economical can you do it, right? How many, like, with less resources.
In other words, cheap.
Yes. Like, effective and cheap. And I hate to tell you, homie, but those AKs, I know our nice M16s and ARs are great. Trust me, I know. But, like, AKs work real well as well, you know? Like, their cheap drones work just as good as our expensive ones. Right? Like, this is what I've been trying to tell people. It's about doing it cheaply, right? They've talked about this with American tanks, right? Think about how you make money we are upselling our own equipment. We're throwing tons of fancy stuff they don't need, right? It's like a car salesman, you know? Like, you're getting the undercoat that's not necessary. You're getting, like, it's, this is what it is now. So the Iron Dome costs thousands of dollars, our money, to run, you know, like, and it's designed by, you know, our people, made tons of money off all of it. But anyway, you were saying?
Another major issue with the Iron Dome is its infrequent triggering by false alarms, leading to unexpected explosions that shook civilians and set off sirens. During the May 2021 war between Gaza and Israel, the Iron Dome failed to counter large barrages of concentrated rocket fire. This failure prompted the U.S. to urge the deployment of more batteries as a reinforcement strategy. According to the Times of Israel, the deaths of 2 Israeli women in Ashkelon during the 11th Day War may have been caused by an Iron Dome technical malfunction. While Israel claims that its Iron Dome air defense system intercepts between 90 to 99% of targets, Professor Emeritus Theodore Postal of MIT offers a stark different assessment. I would say that the intercept rate is at best 4 or 5%. Postal said in an interview with the Boston Globe last October. He added that the interception rate is likely as low as 1%. Postal is known for debunking the effectiveness of the U.S. Patriot missile system. After analyzing evidence, he found that the air defense system had managed to shoot down 0 to 1 Iraqi Scud missiles fired at Saudi Arabia and Israel.
Okay.
Also concluded extensive research on the Iron Dome and its effectiveness during the 2012 and 2014 wars between Gaza and Israel. He concluded that the intercept performance of Iron Dome appears to be probably 5% or less. This conclusion was reached despite a range of upgrades to the air defense system between its first use in 2011 and 2014. While the Iron Dome is often hailed as a near impenetrable air defense system by both pro-Israel and pro-Palestinian political commentators, its history and independently evaluated effectiveness suggests otherwise. Despite its reputation, the Iron Dome does not appear to be as effective as claimed. The reason of its high praise is similar to that of every air defense system on Earth. They are marketed to outshine competitor systems. Zoom out, please. The Iron Dome, a product of Rafael Advanced Defense Systems and Israel Aerospace Industries, IAI, utilizes Tamir missiles co-developed by the Raytheon division of U.S. Defense, Como Gloria RTX. Israel has consistently claimed that an interception rate of over 90% since the system's development in 2011, a figure that has remained unchanged despite numerous upgrades and amendments over the past decade. A significant downside, aside from malfunctions causing civilian casualties and infrastructure damage, is the cost of using the system. In 2012, the Iron Dome was upgraded to use smaller and more cost-effective missiles due to high expenses associated with its operation. This has been a recurring issue as the system combats rockets that only cost a few $100s to produce, while the cost of a single Iron Dome missile is approximately $50,000. While many air defense systems are oversold by the military-industrial complex and numerous nations publish unrealistic information about their effectiveness, the issue in Israel may run deeper. It's such a small country, the Israeli public has been given systems like Iron Dome to believe in, a system that makes them feel safe and in which they feel they can put their faith. During past conflicts with armed resistance in the Gaza Strip, the relative ineffectiveness of the munitions fired towards Israelis has supported the claim that the Iron Dome intercepts over 90% of incoming projectiles. However, as the Israeli military now confronts more sophisticated weapons from groups like Hezbollah, the famed air defense system appears to be taking a blow to its credibility. I shall stop there for a second. But any thoughts?
Nope. Sounds about like what we were saying.
Yep. So as I said, the following is speculation on my part, but as I said, not too far off the mark. So given what we now know about the Iron Dome and basically being shit, really. So Yashar Ali tweeted this out yesterday. This was breaking news yesterday. So U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has approved the sale of $20 billion in military hardware and weapons to the Israeli government. Israeli Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant writes, "Thank you to Secretary of Defense Austin and Secretary Blinken for advancing critical force buildup initiatives that assist Israel in developing and maintaining its qualitative military edge in the region. This includes incorporating F-151As into the IAF fleet of fighter aircraft and providing critical ammunition to ensure Israel's capacities and security. As we fight to defend Israel on 7 different fronts, your message of support and commitment to Israel's security are clear. So you can kind of see there what some of the toys that they will be getting. So Zane Steiger.
God, why you gotta
what?
I got spooked by the vile demons on my screen.
Oh.
No.
So Zane Steiger tweeted out, how are Biden and Harris working around the clock for a ceasefire when what I just mentioned was just approved today? So in other words, this
$18.8 billion. Jesus Christ. Like,
right.
Billion with a B.
Right. But Kamala cares, y'all. So let's get into this a little bit more. This is from the AP. Where Tara Kopp writes, U.S. approves $20 billion in weapon sales to Israel amid threat of wider Middle East war. So she writes, the U.S. has approved $20 billion in arms sales to Israel, including scores of fighter jets and advanced air-to-air missiles, the State Department announced yesterday. Congress was notified of the impending sale, which includes more than 50 F-15 fighter jets, advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles,
AMRAAMs,
120 milliliter tank ammunition, and high explosive mortars and tactical vehicles, and comes at a time of intense concern that Israel may become involved in a wider Middle East war. However, the weapons are not expected to get to Israel anytime soon. They are contracts that will take years to fulfill. So
they might need a pier. Get those in there.
Well, it's to ensure that Israel will get their weapons regardless of who is president. So
yeah.
And I think from what I read, like some of these first toys will not arrive in Israel until I think around maybe 2027, I think.
Jesus Christ.
So
you minis, do your thing, would you? You know? I'm just saying.
But anyway, much of what is being sold is to help Israel increase its military capacity in the long term.
Those are going to have to be by boat. So orcas, you know what to do. You know?
The United States is committed to the security of Israel, and it is vital to U.S. national interests to assist Israel to develop and maintain a strong and ready self-defense capability. This proposed sale is consistent with those objectives, the State Department said in a release on the sale. The Biden administration has had to balance its continuous support for Israel with a growing number of calls from lawmakers and the U.S. public to curb military support there due to the high number of civilian deaths in Gaza. It has curbed one delivery of 2,000-pound weapons amid continuing airstrikes by Israel in densely populated civilian areas in Gaza. The contracts will cover not only the sale of 50 aircraft to be produced by Boeing, it will also include upgrade kits for Israel to modify its existing fleet of 24 F-15 fighter jets with new engines and radars, among other upgrades. The jets comprise the biggest portion of the $20 billion in sales, with the first deliveries expected in 2029. So I got that wrong, but all the same.
Who doesn't?
So again, this is speculation, but going back to the Iron Dome for a second, I think just its crappy rate of success in terms of actually striking down missiles might actually be on purpose in terms of actually giving justification for us and any other Western country who wants to do their bidding to go with the guise of, oh, we need to improve it, oh, we need to upgrade it, oh, we need more weapons, just so like you can ensure the illusion of safety for Israel, but also making the military industrial complex money so that they're able to provide these contracts to Israel. And as they said, they're not going to get these within the next 5 years, at least among the first, fighter jets. So basically, all this says is that for those of you who think that Kamala is actually, sincere in terms of actually doing something around this war, I mean, you can argue that this is on Biden and she may not have anything to do with this directly, but she's still involved in this. And I've yet to hear her mention anything regarding this 20 billion gift that we're giving to Israel, again, with our money, for the sake of basically starting World War.
Yep.
And you know who else agrees with me?
I'm sure quite a few, but particularly this lady.
Yeah, this lady who, while we've had our issues with her,
yes,
has actually spoken out correctly in regards to what's been happening in Gaza. So what, that that shit is not necessarily going so well.
Yes,
the bare
minimum position is now being easier to take. You mean?
Yes.
Gotcha.
So if you want to zoom out, so this clip was clipped from Case Study QB.
Yep.
So here is Joy Reid again, actually speaking sense in one of the rare moments that she actually does speak sense towards what the hell we're doing.
Early Saturday, an Israeli airstrike hit a school serving as a shelter in Gaza, killing at least 100 people and wounding nearly 50 others, according to Palestinian health authorities. On the same day as the strike, Vice President Kamala Harris condemned the loss of civilian life.
Yet again, there are far too many civilians who've been killed. I mean, Israel has a right to go after the terrorists that are Hamas. But as I have said many, many times, they also have, I believe, an important responsibility to avoid civilian casualties.
They're elected.
Uncommitted and anti-war voters see a reset with Harris on Israel and Gaza. Her language is different, capable of moving the needle and gaining favor with some of the voters who rejected President Biden over his stance on the region. But language is not enough. This was a school serving as a shelter for refugees of war, attacked during morning prayers. Witnesses said children, women.
Which is a war crime, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, let's not even talk about, this is a war crime. Like, granted, even if you made the defense of Hamas being there, and for what I heard with reports, I think Israel put up, somewhat of around 20 people who claimed to be a Hamas.
Right.
Pretty much all of them were not.
Yes.
3 of the people that they put up were dead already.
Right.
And the rest were old men. But mostly these are people who were seeking shelter in the school because they have nowhere else to go.
I've seen them try to put up stuff where it's, they fired from civilian infrastructure using like they were in civilian clothes and not in uniform, and it's like, Geneva Code says that a headband is enough, to count as uniform, right? On top of, who do you think's making their uniforms? First of all, you think that just is around? You bombed everything.
Right. But again, bombing schools is a war crime. We should not be sending weapons.
Regardless if it states specifically, regardless of if it's being used for military installments. Regardless.
Right. So not even the fact that so just to kind of not stop Joy and Reid right there, it's not even the shot that they shouldn't have shot at the school at all. So, but anyway, let's go back to the rest of what she said. So I had to make that point because I think people are now forgetting, I guess, giving the fatigue that in of itself is illegal.
Stop!
That in of itself
You
is
violated the law.
Like, if Hamas was there, that's no reason to knock out a school.
Yeah.
Women and old people were inside sleeping, and that the school was hit without an evacuation warning from the IDF. President Biden has faced months of public pressure to cut off the supply of weapons to Israel amid its war on Gaza, which has killed about 40,000 people since October. It's why the squad, all elected officials of color, are demanding a ceasefire, despite being targeted for removal from office by staunch supporters of the Netanyahu government and the ongoing bombardment of Gaza. The world is on edge right now, and rightly so. The U.S. is sending more troops to the Middle East to bolster defenses as Israel braces for an attack by Iran. So far, Vice President Harris has shown herself to be better positioned than President Biden to bring the party together on this issue. But we have to remember, Harris is still the vice president serving in the Biden administration. So her policy, should it differ from Biden's, isn't anything that she can implement now. Though it's absolutely fair for people to ask, why are we giving bombs to Israel? And would she keep that policy in place as president? These questions will surely be visible during the Democratic National Convention next week. And how the party answers could impact the election, not to mention the lives of so many Palestinians who have suffered for much too long. For God's sake, this needs to end. And that is tonight's readout.
Any questions?
Yeah. No, I don't have any questions. Do you?
No, not necessarily.
Well, let's hope. I know we have a few folks in the space who are going to be heading to Chicago next week. We ain't, but it'll be very interesting to see. I'm sure there's going to be protests there. I'm also sure that there's going to be ways that the Democrat Party are going to do to negate those voices. But no, I do think that the question that Jory should be asking is something that Kamala should be asked is, what's your plan to get a ceasefire? Especially given that Israel, like, basically took out, the Hamas negotiator. And now they're saying Hamas, and the people are like, well, Hamas is not coming to the negotiating table. Yeah, like, they've made offers 9 fucking times. And Israel has made it a point to basically be like, we don't care. We're not interested. So why should Hamas at this point come to... Look, I'm just speaking truth here. Like, why should Hamas bother at this point when Israel has not been working in good faith? They've already said they're not interested in a ceasefire. So my thing is right now is like, if Israel has a right to defend itself, given what they just did to Iran, doesn't Iran have that same right? Right? That kind of what makes sense to me, but I'm not sure about everyone else.
Right. But hold on. I don't know why that came up. Yeah, there we go. And you probably want it like this anyway.
Yeah.
So I was trying to add back, we need to put that scrolling fair use stuff over things again. That would probably help too. But I was just trying to do that while I was thinking about it. No, go away, Joy Reid. I think that's it, right? I think that's all you have in here.
Yeah, that's all I got.
Cool.
So you have to switch out. You have to
do this, and so it's not backwards.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go. And then you can take off the. But anyway, let us know in the comments if you are planning to go to Chicago, since that's next week, if you don't give a damn, or more importantly, like, what questions would you, if you had the option, if you had the time, if you could ask Vice President Harris in terms of what she's doing in terms of ending this conflict, this assault in the Middle East, and how do you feel about what Inkla Cash reported on regarding the Iron Dome? Let us know in the chat or let us know in the comments if you're watching the clips after this. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to fight the suppression that YouTube has made clear that they are going to do for us for sure. And make sure you leave a comment. Please help us get to 3K. And don't forget to make sure you donate. You can go to the QR code on the screen, or you can go to the link that you see on the screen at the Ko-fi link. Or you can go to our description and you can find all the links of where you can give towards the channel and to the network. I think that's it. Thank you guys.
All right, should I check Rockfin and Rumble?
Sure.
Let's scroll down. Denver Attaway on the Rockfins. And Hemp Car. I wish I tipped on Rumble so they would have read the Jill Stein tip. So, oh, they were talking about stuff on Jimmy. But how do I scroll up this way? There we go. But yeah, anyone on Rumble? Let's go look on Rumble. I hopped on the app to let you know I watch on a TV app. That's why I don't chat. But I figured I would watch on Rumble instead of YouTube for once, since it's just as easy. Yeah, I heard they made some TV apps for that now. You can go to, you know, Rumble on Roku, I think, now. So that's nice. You know? Be nice if they had chat on that, too, so you could just pop that up and, you know, have chat on there or something, you know? You can always pull it up on your phone. You've got one of those. But, all right. What do you got on YouTube's?
I'm on T Orca says, y'all see the MAGA crowd clutching their pearls about Chicago?
Yep. Which is exactly what they want you to do.
Right. I'm on Team Orca also said Putin calls for immediate ceasefire.
Yep.
Who are these people?
Hey, look at that, a $40 donation from the Accord Lord. Hopefully that Honda's doing well, you know. You know, I guess he would rule over the entire kingdom of Honda Accords, since he is the Accord Lord. Like, he's the feudal lord of Honda Accords, you know. But anyway, anything else?
Not that I can see. No, we good.
Yep. Obama, someone said in the chat. All right. You ready for our next one? Last one of the night. So as you covered in our last segment, things have been happening since 1948. You remember what happened then, right, Kyber?
The Nakba.
Yeah. The Nakba, which you do know what that translates to, right?
Catastrophe.
That is correct. Describe the events of the 1948 Palestine War. You know, pretty terrible. It's like their Trail of Tears, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So, just to give some context. So, Jonathan Cook, another Indie Media Award honoree over at Consortium, which in and of itself is a network that is Indie Media awarded. But he writes, Israel's been like this since 1948. We have been lied to for decades about the creation of Israel, writes Jonathan Cook. It was born in sin and continues to live in sin. So he writes, Israel's army new displacement order from northern Gaza, that headline about yet another Israeli operation to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians in the tiny besieged and utterly destroyed enclave of Gaza was published Thursday in Middle East Eye. When I began studying Israeli history more than a quarter of a century ago, people claiming to be experts proffered plenty of excuses to explain why Israelis should not be held responsible for the 1948 ethnic cleansing of some 750,000 Palestinians from their home, what Palestinians call their Nakba, or catastrophe, right? And we've covered a bit of this, I think. Let me go to Twitter for a moment. But sure, we'll go here. But we've covered this particularly among the settler movement, correct, Care Bear? You remember that segment, right? I think it's liberation.
Yes.
So let me find that on mine. Because we had Vanessa Beeley on recently. And we had a bit of a back and forth on Twitter. Yeah, here it is. So this lady, right? Daniel Weiss, you remember her? So
I'm gonna be nice. I was gonna say something not so nice.
This land was promised to the Jews by God.
I mean, that's how they feel, right? Vanessa put this up
by God.
So we'll get into a bit, but
אז לאן זה הולך לדעתך האירוע שלנו ברצועת?
So where do you think our event in the Gaza Strip is going?
לאן זה הולך?
Where it's
לדעתי,
going?
תוך פחות
My
משנה,
opinion, in less than a year, there will be settlers in Gaza.
יושבים בעזה.
למה את חושבת?
Why do you think so? Because I have a sense of the historical rhythm. The moment Prime Minister Netanyahu said that there would be a long-term military presence, I said, this is it. This is an invitation to the dance. And he truly made an invitation for us to the dance. I'll stay, and you will use the expertise. I'll call this copy-paste. What we did in the West Bank and also in the Golan.
This land was promised to the Jews by God.
Right? So, you know, I mentioned that that we covered this a while ago, right?
Yes.
So, and you brought a New Yorker article, which I find funny. Right? You know, she
said some ridiculous stuff in there. That's why I bought it.
Vanessa saying Weiss has been working on the theft of Palestinian land for more than 50 years, beginning in the 70s with Ariel Sharon, right? And was also neighbors with Smotrich, right? So, you know, for decades, Daniel Weiss has been one of the leaders of Israel's settlement movement. Weiss became involved in settlement politics in the wake of the 1967 war in the early 70s. So, you know, neighbors with Smotrich, Bezazzle, right? Bedazzled Smotrich is here, you know? So, which, you know, talking about Ariel Sharon, right? And I replied, well, shit really does stick together, huh? So they've been at this for a minute, as we are about to find out. So again, what Palestinians call their Nakba, or catastrophe, correct? So, point number one. I was told most Israelis were not involved and knew nothing of the war crimes carried out against the Palestinians during Israel's establishment. 2, I was told that Israelis who did not take part in war crimes like Operation Broom to expel Palestinians from their homeland did so only because they were traumatized by their experiences in Europe. In the immediate aftermath of the Holocaust, these Israelis assumed that, were the Jewish people to survive, they had no alternative but to drive out the Palestinians in mass.
Okay, stop. No, stop right there. So this is the kind of bullshit that I've been hearing online. And this is also the kind of bullshit that I was hearing today, like in terms of Palestinians and like some, again, like, and I'm, look, ADOS and FES, you can come for me. I don't really give a fuck at this point. You can come for me all you want. But a lot of this bullshit is kind of what I think you're kind of starting to create dissent online and otherwise.
Yep.
My thing is this. If your liberation depends on the oppression of other people,
yeah, you're fucked.
You're fucked.
Yeah.
So and again, this is kind of like this victim mentality of like Israelis who are being like, well, you know, like we went through the Holocaust, so we deserve it, and so we're gonna kick out the people who are living here way before you, like in order of a matter of survival. That's a whole a bull to me. Like, so, like, it does not make any sense that you're going to torture and oppress other people for essentially your safety.
Yep.
Like, how selfish do you have to be?
Where have we heard
And
that
to
before?
Right. And to Black people who are going to put on that stance too, like, fuck you all, essentially.
Yeah.
Because Black people especially should know better.
Mhm.
And it's not about like, because I'm hearing like, oh, well, you know, we should only care about our own. Yes, you should prioritize your own people. But that doesn't mean you have to shit on others too while you're trying to get the freedom that you're trying to seek for your damn selves.
Yeah.
Like, that's the difference. You can sympathize with oppressed people, but not shit on other ones, if that makes any sense.
Well, there's a reason why, classically, allegedly, the reason that we're not supposed to torture our enemies is so that our enemies don't torture us. Right? Because we're selfish like that. Right?
Sure.
But it still applies. Right? If you don't want, the reason why you don't want suffering done to other people is so that suffering isn't done upon you. So if we're going to talk about, you know, what you should do for your people, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
But there's more. Number 3, from others, I was told that no ethnic cleansing had taken place. Collin, it never happened.
She even caught me on camera.
But the Palestinians had simply fled at the first sign of conflict because they had no real historical attachment to the land. I take it you've heard that bullshit too.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So we're laying out the bullshit. Wait, there's one more. 4, I was told that Palestinian displacement was an unfortunate consequence of a violent war in which Israeli leaders had the best interests of Palestinians at heart. The Palestinians hadn't left because of Israeli violence, but because they had been ordered to do so by Arab leaders in the region. So we're playing the blame game now.
Right.
Right? So, in fact, the story went, Israel had pleaded with many of the 750,000 refugees to come home afterwards, but those same Arab leaders stubbornly blocked their return. Right? This bullshit. Right?
Which, even if that were true, even if that was true, what's the excuse of Israel not allowing them to come back safely now?
So, every one of these claims was nonsense, directly contradicted by all the documentary evidence. Very simple. That should be even clearer today as Israel continues, as you were saying, the ethnic cleansing and slaughter of the Palestinian people more than 75 years on. Every Israeli knows exactly what is going on in Gaza. After all, their children soldiers keep posting videos online showing the latest crimes they have committed, from blowing up mosques and hospitals to shooting randomly into homes. Polls show all but a small minority of Israelis approve of the savagery that has killed many tens of thousands of Palestinians, including children. A third of them think Israel needs to go further in its barbarity. Today, Israeli TV show hosts debate about how much pain soldiers should be allowed to inflict by raping their Palestinian captives. Don't believe me? Huh? Well,
yeah,
unfortunately.
Right.
So here's Niz Mahani, right? Shocking. Israel is quite possibly the only nation in the world where it is permissible and commonplace to go on TV and openly declare that the raping of prisoners should be legitimate and official policy of the state and must be widely implemented. I told my friends that I don't give a rat's ass about what they do to a guy like that. What is that what you really think? Unequivocally, yes. Wait. I'll explain. Soldiers who are suspected in the criminal offense of rape, yes, of a cuffed prisoner, it doesn't interest you. Does the morality of all soldiers not interest you? By the way, they're not soldiers. In fact, they're not soldiers. They're criminals. I don't give a rat's ass what they did to that Hamas man. I always remember, first of all, the only thing that is a problem for me here is that it's not a regulated policy of the state to abuse their detainees. Any questions?
No, but we've seen, last week of basically Israel letting that guy who was essaying a prisoner, they let him go free, and he had his mask, and he was proud of it. He had his mask on, and then he took his
took
mask
it off.
and I'm
He's like,
dude,
nah,
keep
it
that mask
me.
back on. You fucking demon, put that mask back on.
It's all right. I'm sure there's red triangle videos already. But friend of the show, Nuno, tells us the U.S. State Department has known about mass rape in Israeli dungeons since before the Gaza genocide, and they said and did nothing. This is synonym, right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to do that. We're going to do this.
I was part of the human rights vetting process for arms going to Israel, and a charity called Defense of Children International Palestine drew our attention at the State Department to the sexual assault, actually the rape of a 13-year-old boy that occurred in an Israeli prison in the Mosque Bia in Jerusalem. We examined these allegations. We believed they were credible. We put them to the government of Israel. And you know what happened the next day? The IDF went into the DCIP offices and removed all their computers and declared them a terrorist entity. I think it is vital that atrocities not happen to anyone, not sexual violations, not any kind of gross violation of human rights.
So I think this was the first.
So, yeah. Any questions?
No.
Yep.
I mean, as the saying goes, every accusation is confession, right?
Mm-hmm.
What they say that Hamas does is actually the things that they do.
So, if the existential fears of Israelis and Jews still require the murder, rape, and ethnic cleansing of Palestinians 3/4 of a century on from the Holocaust, then we need to treat that trauma as the problem and refuse to indulge it any longer. The people of Gaza are fleeing their homes, or at least a small number who still have homes, not bombed to ruins. Not because they lack an attachment to Palestine, they are fleeing from one part of the cage Israel has created for them to another part of it for one reason alone, because all of them, men, women, and children, are terrified of being slaughtered by an Israeli military at best, indifferent to their suffering and their fate. What's a caged bird do, Collin? You know? Maya Angelou, poet laureate. You know? You know, that bird sang, don't it? Isn't that how it works?
Yes.
So, speaking of singing, Jonathan K. Cook, the official death toll in Gaza is a lie. The casualty numbers are far, far higher. In my latest article.
We have said that. Like,
yep.
You know, the counts are, it's substantially low on purpose to make people believe that it's not so bad. In comparison, I talked about the Rwandan genocide in 1994. There was close to 1 million. Like, you can make the argument like 1 million is a big number, and that in people's minds is going to be like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like,
you don't even comprehend 1 million.
Right. I would imagine that if we were saying now that the death toll in Gaza was about that much, and I think people would take more. But and it shouldn't even be the fact that, let's assume that it is 40,000. It's not, but let's assume that it is. It's like, it's basically, I said this back then, it's like the idea, and this is kind of like the shitty game that we're playing, is how many should die before we can count it as a genocide. Like,
the numbers
40,000,
don't lie,
50, 60,
and they spell disaster for you.
125. Like, what if it were 12 people?
Yeah.
You know, like, it doesn't matter the number, it's really the matter of intent. And at the end of the day. So but I think that's kind of like almost, I hear myself being very cynical in this way, but it's almost like I want the number to increase so it gives some more urgency to people that this is actually like something that has to be dealt with in the right way, or at least do something. But I think the idea that people are kind of mismanaging the numbers, saying it's like around 40,000 now, is purposeful so that
Yeah.
it doesn't give that kind of
Well, we may pull that Jonathan K. Cook article and cover it. Might be useful to add into something. If we haven't already. But so K. Cook continues, no serious case can be made today that Israel is carrying out any of its crimes in Gaza, from bombing civilians to starving them, with regret, or that its leaders seek the best for the Palestinian population. Israel is on trial for genocide at the world's highest court precisely because the judges there suspect it has the very worst intentions possible towards the Palestinian people. We have been lied to for decades about the creation of Israel. It was always a settler colonial project, and like other
Shout out to James Bowen. He called that out back in the 60s.
Yep. Even Muhammad Ali called it that. From the US and Australia to South Africa and Algeria, right? It always viewed the native people as inferior, non-human, as animals, which they still do, and was bent on their elimination. So, what is obviously true today was true then too. At Israel's birth, Israel was born in sin, and it continues to live in sin. We in the West abetted its crimes in 1948, and we're still abetting them today. Nothing has changed, except the excuses no longer work. Jonathan Cook is an Indie Media Award-winning British journalist. So, any questions, concerns, thoughts before we head to our next bit? Well, this is still happening, and the only reason we see these things still happening is because those cage birds still sing, Collin. But when that cage bird sings, what happens to him? Unfortunately,
they're unalived.
Yes. So, Palestinian journalist visits Ismail Hanya's home in Gaza. Do you remember who that is? Ismail Hanya?
Yes.
Okay. Hamas leader, correct? I do believe.
Mm-hmm.
In Gaza to report on his death, Israel assassinated him too, the journalist. So Tarekse Hajjaj, I hope that's how you pronounce your name. I'm sorry. Forgive my gringoness. Over in Mondo Weiss. Luckily, Sheerpost pulling it for us as well. The assassination of Hamas Politburo chief Ismail Hanya has led to a new turning point in the war. In Gaza, a state of mourning is apparent. The assassination that took place in Tehran at dawn on Wednesday opened raw wounds for many in Gaza. It added to the ongoing cycle of fear and loss that has not ended since October 7th. The Qassam brigades, the military wing of Hamas, okay, remember there's multiple factions, mourned Ismail Hanya and said in a statement that the assassination that took place in the heart of the Iranian capital was a critical and dangerous event that would take the battle to new dimensions and would have major repercussions on the region, as we have been seeing.
Yeah.
By targeting Ismail Hanya, Israel imagines that it could weaken the Hamas movement and the Palestinian resistance, and this is a great illusion. Mohammed al-Hindi, deputy head of Palestinians Islamic Jihad Political Bureau. What's the definition of jihad, Collin? Do you know that? Look that up while we.
Is that isn't it?
I think it's.
I'll look it up.
Yep. Cool. People in al-Shadi refugees camp west of Gaza City, where Ismail Hanya was born and raised, received the news early in the morning. His home there lays in ruins, bombed by Israel several months prior, and people had gathered around it to commemorate the slain leader. Children held up his picture while standing next to the rubble of his home.
So jihad, in its basic term, struggle.
Yes. One of the people who was there to capture the scene was a reporter with Al Jazeera, whose name was also Ismail. He had become a household name in his own right for anyone following the war's developments, especially in northern Gaza, where the fighting has been the most brutal. Al Jazeera correspondent Ismail Al-Ghul was assassinated by Israel in the line of duty as he covered the commemoration of Ismail Haniyeh. He and other journalists who was a part of the team were in a clearly identifiable press vehicle when a missile directly hit them. It killed both reporters and a young boy walking by. The strike left Ismail Al-Ghul's body headless.
Jesus.
So this was on their Instagram, right? Martyr journalist Ismail Al-Ghul, and do not think that those who were killed in the cause of God are dead. Rather, they are alive with their Lord being provided for. So this is a statement from him about others. Anyway, the death of 2 Ismails within the span of a few hours has hit the people of Gaza hard. Israel's trying to take away from everything from Palestinians, even their pride in such leaders and journalists. Mahmoud Essa, a journalist in northern Gaza who attended Al-Ghul's funeral, told Mondoweiss, "The Israelis are sending us a message with every assassination. Look what happens to the journalist who goes to film Haniyeh's destroyed home. We've bombed his head off." So, in remembering Ismail, when the genocidal war first started, Ismail Al-Ghul had resolved to remain in the north to cover the war, sending his wife and little daughter south to escape the fighting. Anas al-Sharif, a colleague of Ismail at Al Jazeera, appeared in a video standing beside Ismail's headless body, holding the press vest that he had worn at the time of his assassination. Al-Sharif said that despite his belief that a vest would protect him, it did nothing to save Ismail. Al-Sharif lamented that it has now stained with Ismail's blood and scattered remains. As journalists and others carried his body for the funeral, a rescue officer arrived with a plastic bag to collect pieces of Ismail's head for the burial, Mahmoud Essa told Mondoweiss. The death of their colleague was a harsh reminder to journalists of the dangers faced by reporters in Gaza, forcing many to confront the grim realities of their profession. One of the most poignant tributes that circulated was a letter Ismail had written to his daughter Zaina. On June 30th, Ismail posted the letter on his personal Facebook account. He expressed sorrow over not having seen her since the war began and lamented missing her growth and presence. Quote, "At the beginning of the war, when my little girl Zaina was crawling and trying to say Baba, I was at my happiest. But as the war continued, my heart was heavy, knowing she was displaced and far away," he wrote. Zaina would call out to me when she saw me on the screen saying Baba. It was a wonderful feeling, but it didn't last. For 9 months, she asked, "Where is Baba?" The pain of not being with her and watching her grow was immense. He concluded, "But we find solace in knowing that we sacrificed everything for this cause and this message." So, closing thoughts, Collin?
I mean, what else can be said than what we haven't said?
Yeah.
I think at this point, way too many times. And again, I say it like, and kind of going off of this, and this story was probably more widely reported, but like the twin newborns that were unalived a couple of days ago. They were 4 days old. They were just born, and then the dad went to get their birth certificates and basically found them and his wife
Right.
gone.
Which we'll probably cover next week. Or I will, I think.
But again, it's just the idea of how monstrous do you have to be? And this is what gets me so pissed off about people who are getting so, like, people were willing to hold the line for Biden But because now we got a new toy that's Kamala Harris, who seemingly cares, that people are like, oh, it's okay. Like, like Warts, Warts is progressive. He's done some progressive stuff, and he allegedly cares about Gaza, so things are going to be okay. And it's like, you're selling yourselves out for essentially crumbs that aren't even promised to you. But because, like, again, it's not Biden, then you guys think, like, and again, it just shows, like, these people have not been serious. Have not been serious about what's been happening in Gaza. Because if you've had that same heat for Biden, you should have even more heat for Kamala right now. Because, and I'm getting tired of people saying, well, Trump is going to be worse. Well, Gaza might not exist by November. Like, Trump may not have to do a damn thing if he gets in office but come January. Gaza would be completely destroyed by then. But you're worried about Trump. Like, how about worrying about the people right now and actually holding them? And the only solace that I have right now is, and I think I mentioned this last week, is that colleges are going to be starting up again in a couple of weeks. I'm hearing murmurs that a lot more protests at colleges are going to start up again.
Yeah.
You know, I even see, like, just now that Kamala got the business at an event in New York.
Yeah.
So these people should not be comfortable none of them should be comfortable. Like,
and don't buy their gaslight either.
They're making us every day. They make us uncomfortable every fucking day. Why should they walk around with the privilege of not being able to worry about shit because of their position? Like, if we're not comfortable, they shouldn't be comfortable.
No.
And especially for the people in Gaza who are living right now in fear of wondering if they're going to make it to the next day. Like, it's just really disgusting how people, even in our space, can sell out on account of allegedly progressive issues, which I said on Twitter, it's not even progressive. It's like a lot of developed countries have the shit that we still don't have. It's just that we're so fucking backwards, and we're just so bought with all these corporations that are trying to make money versus actually trying to help people, that America is the shithole that it is in that regard. So I don't want to hear people basically being like, you know, they haven't promised us anything. They haven't done anything worthy of your vote, at least to me now. So really, you shouldn't be giving them your support. That's my opinion. You should be giving them your support because they haven't offered anything yet. And but we know what they're going to offer us is still going to be like more the same incremental status quo bullshit that we've had to deal with for the last 4 years.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to close on this footage here where press in Gaza are taking off their vests because it makes them a target.
Right.
So I feel like that's pretty powerful footage right there, myself personally. But, and the fact that they're still willing to do their job without it, you know?
Right.
So, I don't know, you know, support as best you can, divest from anything that gives Israel money as much as possible, you know, like make them uncomfortable, as Collin was saying. Which, you know, we certainly make YouTube uncomfortable. So if you want to help our efforts, you can go to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork, take that camera app on your phone and scan that QR code on your screen. You know, otherwise, just try to get this to people. Share the video. We're heavily suppressed. Any little bit helps, you know. Like and subscribe. I don't know if that does anything, but supposedly that's what we're told. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Allegedly, this engagement helps us. So, you know, we're trying to get to 3K. you know, keep that ball rolling, try to get bigger so we don't have as many problems to deal with. But, you know, otherwise, thanks for watching. All right, Care Bear, anything you got?
Just seeing global solidarity, silence is complicity. Yep. Also from global solidarity, once an injustice appears in the world, if you do not use your voice to speak against it, your silence makes you complicit with the injustice.
Yeah.
Someone famous said that, or something alluding to that.
Denver Attaway on the Rockfin. You know you're on the right side of history when you're arguing for the right to rape your prisoners. You know that's the whole a man should not lay with another man as he would a woman from Leviticus is particularly against specifically raping your enemies. That is what it actually is directed at. So that's Old Testament, no? You know? Like Leviticus, I do believe.
Yeah.
So
I should know this from my.
That's in that Jewish book too, if I'm not mistaken.
Should be, yeah.
But
they read the Old Testament, so Grabentine on YouTube says, like Laukanet said, every time they, I guess politicians, look over their shoulders, they should see us staring back at well, not just staring, just be like yelling, honestly, at this point.
Yeah. So
shouldn't have a moment's peace.
Yeah. You talked about the injustice appears in the world if you not use your voice to speak against it.
Yes.
They should be as afraid as Nixon when he told Kissinger, "Oh my God, they are going to swarm the White House and get us all." So they're scared of pitchforks, big inflatable giant pitchforks and inflatable guillotines. They are terrified of, and should be. But, I have calendar for us. Indy gave you a list of things, correct? Should have done. He said he was. Cool. I have this. Subject to change, as always. All times Eastern, as you should know. But yeah, what do we got, Care Bear?
So tomorrow, I feel this is happening. We have Politically Homeless with Himbo and Crab. She's homeless. She's homeless. Thank you. Friday night at 7, we have Angel in the Afternoon. And then at 10:30 Friday, we have American Tradition Clip Show.
It's an American tradition.
Saturday.
This was last week.
That's what is that? I guess that's a.
Yeah, these are stuff that got replays that got aired on Saturday.
Okay.
So if you missed stuff, we always try to give you opportunities to chat with people and all that stuff. We did. Snow Himbo did a thing, and I'm sure we'll do a thing this Saturday.
But for sure, we'll have Himbo streaming at 11 Eastern. All these times are Eastern, by the way, guys. Just so.
Yep.
Sunday. No, that was last week.
Angel did a thing with Kit Cabello. Go check that out.
Well, no, that was from this past week.
Yeah. That's what I meant.
Okay, yeah. So we don't need. So we can ignore that.
How do we miss that this Sunday?
10,
yeah.
With you and Indy, and then followed by Boats at midnight.
Yep, which we did an uncensored one of those, which is up on Rumble if you want to go check that out, and Twitter and Rockfin. If you missed that, that was fun. Got to do all the stuff we don't normally do on YouTube. So yeah.
On Monday,
we'll be doing that.
So on Monday we have the Maple Files. That's a new show that started with Himbo and Yeti. So
Lord Nelson's trousers, it's a Yeti.
So they talk about Canadian politics, which we don't
do here
at all.
Yeah.
So have the advantage of hearing from two Canadians talk in terms of politics up there.
Yep.
Next week, Tuesday, in place of that, will be American Tradition with Vinny and Jesse.
It's a great American tradition.
That would be at 10.
Yep.
And then we'll be back next week. These times are wrong. They have to be fixed.
Yeah, it was all for last week.
So we'll have INN News next week at
9 o'clock.
And I'll be sad because I'll be back at work. It's my last few days
Aww.
of summer break before I get ready for my new kiddos and maybe my last kiddos as a teacher. We'll see. But
well, I think that's just about it.
Yep.
So anything else you want to tell people before we head out of here?
Your vote is your currency. Make sure if you do give it away that you're getting something in return. So yeah.
Cool.
That's really it. Just hold your vote close if you do decide to.
Yeah. Well, as always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Bye, have a great time.